Life is returning to Wuhan, with trains allowed to enter, half a dozen subway lines reopening, and the buses up and running again. But once people arrive at Wuhan station, they haven't made it yet. First, they need to register at the health reception points. A green code on a mobile app shows whether they are considered to be healthy. Trains had been fully booked in advance. For many people, it's the first chance to see their loved ones again after months of lockdown. This young man meets his mother again for the first time in 3 months.
It makes me very happy to see my family. Like my mother said, we wanted to hug. But these are special circumstances, so we can't hug or anything like that. The epidemic situation in China has taken a turn for the better, but it has not been completely destroyed.
Staff at Wuhan station did not take any risks. They all wear full protective gear. They are paying special attention to people who are returning from overseas, particularly as infections are increasing abroad.
I think the resumption of work represents a kind of hope. It at least shows that China is victorious. I saw news on the train that China is now sealing off its borders. I think it's a requirement needed for us to return to work.
According to official statistics, only one new case has been reported in the past week. But until the 8th of April, Wuhan remains a one-way street. Only then will restrictions be lifted for people wanting to leave the city.
All right, let's bring in Fabian Kretschmer. He joins us now from Beijing. Fabian, Wuhan, this is really where the pandemic first emerged. Millions of people there were put under total lockdown. What's life like there now with these restrictions starting to be lifted?
Well, I guess you cannot call it normal, but what is actually normal these days anyway? But compared to the previous weeks, yes, streets are filling up with people. People are going shopping, also enjoying their new freedom. I mean, for several weeks, they haven't been allowed to just leave their residential compounds. So yes, also bus routes are operating again. Subways are surprisingly crowded as well, but it's only a partial opening up of the city. The people are not, or the residents of Wuhan are not allowed yet to leave the city, but people are allowed to enter the city. And when they enter at the train stations, they have to prove that they're healthy, and they do that with a smartphone QR code that they scan. And a green code means that they're healthy. That means they have been tested before and have not been in contact with anyone infected or who had contact to a confirmed case.
Fabian, given these controls that are still in place, I mean, there must still be fears that, like in some other countries in Asia, there could be a second wave of infections.
Yeah, actually, also within the country, we know that people in Hubei province who are leaving the province, Hubei, that's a province surrounding of Wuhan, they have been held back by the residents of other provinces, really at the borders, even policemen fighting to hold the residents back. That's because people are afraid of the people of Hubei. Studies have shown that if China eases those regulations too fast, a second wave will reoccur. And the problem is China does not count asymptomatic cases, meaning patients who don't show any symptoms in their statistics. We know there are thousands and thousands of silent carriers. The Chinese government says they are all under quarantine, but there are doubts about that. And yes, I think we can be sure that now that people leave Hubei and also the travel restrictions within the country are eased, that the numbers will go up again.
Briefly, China's been sending aid to countries. We're talking about face masks, equipment, even medical experts. Is that something Beijing plans to continue?
I'm sure, yes, because this is also about influence and also demonstrating in their point of view that their system is superior, that they were able to defeat the virus. And yes, they really prominently broadcast about it. But we cannot forget that also the European Union also was sending 50 tons of medical equipment to China before. But yes, it was not prominently broadcast compared to what the Chinese are doing now.
All right, Fabian Kretschmer reporting for us from China. Thank you very much. Well, South Korea is tightening border controls after reporting a spike in coronavirus cases, and it's now enforcing 2-week quarantines on all passengers arriving from the United States. Similar quarantines had already been in place for travelers from Europe. So-called walk-through testing stations have been set up. They're capable of more than 10 tests per hour. South Korea reported 146 new infections in the last day. 24 of those came from airport screenings. Still, one news agency reports that the number of people who have recovered from the virus has, for the first time, exceeded the number of quarantined patients. All right, let's bring in Frank Smith now. He is in South Korea's capital, Seoul. Frank, South Korea has reported an increase in new infections, we're hearing. Where exactly are those infections coming from?
Well, most of those infections are coming from the southern city of Daegu in the province of Gyeongsang. That's where that Shinjeonji, that cult, had a series of meetings in early February, and patient number 31 really spread the virus to hundreds of people there. Also, as you mentioned, we're seeing an increase in the number of arrivals coming into South Korea's Incheon airport, bringing some more cases into the country. But again, most of the cases are surrounding Daegu and that south central area of the country.
I mean, this is exactly what the South Korean government and, in fact, many countries in the region were worried about, right? Where you contain the original outbreak, you flatten the curve, and then all of a sudden you start to see these new hotspots sparking up again, right?
That's right. We saw this with a call center here in the South Korean capital, Seoul. People are getting a little bit complacent, and they're not observing the degree of social distancing that they were before here in South Korea. South Korea hasn't implemented a complete lockdown that we've seen in other cities and other countries, but they have engaged in an intense government sort of PR campaign. They've also said that they're going to charge people, and there perhaps will be suits brought against people that go out with the virus. There was a mother and daughter pair that traveled around Jeju Island in South Korea and spread the virus there, and they may be liable for a suit of up to $100,000. South Korea is also implementing some closures. Some parks were closed with cherry blossom festivals coming in. This week, the government is going to decide what to do with schools. They're set to reopen on April 6th, but that's likely going to be extended.
Are there still then enough encouraging signs, do you think, in South Korea? We've been holding up South Korea as a success story. What do we make of the recent numbers and how South Korea has dealt with the pandemic?
Well, one thing that's happened in the last couple of days is, while we've seen 10,000 cases, now more people, more than about 5,000, have been released after being cured of the virus. So that's a very positive sign. South Korea continues with its strong testing and tracking measures, which include, mobile applications where you can see on your phone where people have gone and where people have contracted the virus. But still, it's the social distancing campaign that the government here is looking at and looking to really more strictly enforce.
All right, correspondent Frank Smith reporting for us from Seoul in South Korea. Thank you very much.